And Connie, would you like to get us started?
Yes, good evening. And for me, it's a cloudy morning. It's not raining yet, but it's looking like it's going to rain today. So it's awesome to have a chance to be here and talking with friends in Singapore. So happy end of February and almost March. Great to see you all.
Yeah, and good day to everyone. And I'm CP, and as we see as introduced, I'm also one of the partners in Distinction Asia. Just a quick question: how many of you here you are a career coach, either on your own or you are with one of the agencies? If you could, put a thumbs up or type in the chat. Just want to see how many existing career coaches we have in this conversation. All right. Okay, thank you. Thanks, Eugene. Thanks, Angelina, and thanks, Zaidi. How many of us here you are a HR practitioner? Yeah, currently a HR professional or practitioner in the company. Anyone? All right, no one from HR. Okay, so if I could, as we run through the slides, right, if I could invite you to maybe type in the chat, if you could share with us the role that you are currently playing, or the role or the hat that you are wearing, right? Coming on this chat, then we could also anticipate what are some of the what will be some of the useful information, right, that we can share with you that could be related to the role that you play, and see how this course, right, or this masterclass could be of relevance to you. All right, to start off, I'd like to do a quick introduction. I'm pretty sure many of us here knows Dr. Constance Peachen, or we call her fondly as Connie. All right, so I will invite her to do a quick intro of herself, in case you need a refresher. So Connie, over to you.
All right. So I have to confess that when I was in trouble growing up, I was always Connie Lee. So, that's when I'm in trouble, just call me Connie Lee. And that's a good sign that I'm like, okay, this is not good. What's going on here? So I have had the privilege of working with individuals in career development for over 20 years in a number of different sectors. Secondary education, post-secondary education, business, and workforce. I also have been working with international groups for, about 10 or 11 years now, which has probably been one of the most enriching experiences of my life, and just an incredible privilege to be a part of journeys of folks who are doing the exciting work that is going on in Singapore, as well as in other parts of Asia. But I'm always bragging about Singapore to people. If you want to learn how to do it right, you need to go see those folks in Singapore for what they are doing, both in workforce and in the educational sector. CP and I have been talking about this, for years of doing this, and finally moved to the piece of looking internal to an organization and really focusing on the career piece there. We all know that COVID has changed employment pretty dramatically. And so this is a really important piece for us to be training professionals and hoping that individuals will find time and energy to be a part. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Connie. A quick intro of myself. The reason why I asked whether there are any HR practitioner, because I'm one. All right, and as Connie mentioned, I have been talking to her about doing something like this together for a while. I first knew Connie back in 2016 when I started my GCDF training with her. All right, that was when I gotten very interested in career coaching after I completed my course with Republic Poly, and I thought there's still a bit of something that I want to learn. So I found Connie online, and after doing a bit of research on her and the featured group, I realized she has a lot of experience doing career coaches training, right, in this part of the world, especially in Singapore. So since then, because my work, I've been applying some of what I've learned in my learning with her, as well as my learning with Republic Poly, and I realized that it can be very different, right? Yet at the same time, very similar to what we are trying to achieve as an internal and an external coach. And for those of us who are very familiar with the landscape in Singapore, we are all very aware of, the changing dynamics, right? In the world, Singapore is no longer, I would say, considered as a place, or we can continue to sell Singapore as what it used to be, right? To attract or to create jobs, it has to be a bit more proactive. It cannot just be on price because we are no longer, having the most cost-efficient workforce anymore. We are certainly cost-effective, but then it comes with a cost, right? So I always have this notion that we need to be more proactive in helping our employees, right? Wearing the hat of a HR practitioner, our employees to think about the career. And sometimes it can run contrary to what we are trying to achieve, or so we think, right? Or we think so, right? In terms of, if you help employees discover their career or their career aspiration, are you also helping them to find a path out of the company? So these are some of the things that it's always been on my mind. And all in all, I will discuss this with Connie. And we felt that maybe this is a good time for us to come together. Myself as a HR practitioner who has done some career coaching, and Connie herself as an expert in career coaching who has done some work with HR practitioner, to come together and put this program, for you to join us. Right? So my background very much as a HR practitioner, but I've also done some, lecturing as well, right? On and off when my time permits, right? And of course with that, also trying to understand the kind of the different generations of people who will be joining the workforce or have really joined the workforce. So certainly lots of challenges, all right, for us, and also lots of opportunity for us to provide career coaching, right, to our employees. So to kick off today's sorry. All right, so to start today's conversation and our sharing of the content of the course with you, I'd like to, get asked to watch this very short clip. All right, this gentleman on the screen, many of us will recognize him. His name is Chris Rock, a comedian, right, and also an actor. Some years back, he actually talked about the concept, right, or using his own experience to explain in his own words, right, or in his own experience, right, the difference between a career and a job. Right, and given that the this course that we are going to share with you, right, is about career and career coaching, right, it's certainly important for us to kind of understand, right, the differences. Now, it's not that we don't know, but for some of us, sometimes to kind of word it or to kind of put it into words, right, the kind of difference between career and job, it can be a bit tricky, right? But we certainly kind of, in our own experiences, right, could understand or could feel the difference, right, between what is a career and what is a job. So let's take a look at what Chris Rock has got to share with us. And then as we watch this video, right, I would like you to go to the chat and maybe just type in, in your own words or what you have gathered from Chris Rock, right? What are some of the key differences between a career and a job?
Now I have a career. I have been blessed with a career. So if you got a career, thank God. If you got a job, I hope you get a career one day. That's right. Because when you got a career, there ain't enough time in the day. There ain't enough time. When you got a career, you look at your watch, time just flies like, God, whoa, it's 5:35. I got to come in early tomorrow and work on my project. Because there ain't enough time when you got a career. When you got a job, there's too much time. That's right. You look at your watch like, 9:08. You don't even trust the time when you got a job. You're like, what time you got? 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 9:15? Whoever got the latest time is the right time. You got the right time. He got the right time.
Okay, just a short clip. If you'd like to watch the entire clip, you can always go to YouTube and search Chris Rock, career versus job. But warning, all right, is quite, he has quite a lot of what we call fruity language, right? If you watch the show, Ted Larsson, you will know what I mean by fruity language. Okay, so watch at your own risk. Not safe for work, but certainly it's a good laugh. All right, this leads to, this notion of why do we want to look at workplace career coaching. All right, so from Chris Rock's video, I think many of us could kind of identify with what he was sharing, right? The first thing that you probably have read, right, when you were looking at your employment contract, either for the current job or the previous job you have been in, I think one of the clause you will see is the number of hours, right, you need to work, right? In Singapore, it's 44 to 45 hours, you have to work from 9 to 6 and so on. So this kind of defined job, right, that we go into, right? You just go into a place, you work until from 9 to 6, and then at 6 o'clock, you knock off, right? But since that has since changed, right, we know that that way of looking at, the time that we spend at the workplace, right, needs to change, right? It's no longer just working, right, by looking at the clock, but it's really working towards something, right, that you are passionate, right, that will serve a bigger purpose to what you have. So workplace coaching, as we know it today, all right, either, in your own role as an employee, as a manager, or if any of you have just joined, you are a HR practitioner, okay, we all know this thing called performance management, right? And coaching focuses today mostly on managing performance or on performance, right? Very much not focusing on the development. Now, of course, right, any enlightened organization, right, will try to incorporate the discussion of developmental plans, right, as part of the performance management or part of the coaching conversation, but the focus will always be first on performance. So once we focus on performance, right, we are essentially focusing on the task, right, what the person is doing. We are focusing on the output. And when we do that, right, we are essentially, right, turning that experience, right, into doing a job, not so much for a career. Now, is there anything wrong to say that, we shouldn't be driving performance? Of course not, right? Without performance, right, we certainly will not have a thriving and growing organization, and we can all forget about our salary, right? Okay, no salary will come without any performances. But for the performance to be sustainable, right, to be aspirational, to be part of something bigger, we have to shift, right, or we have to expand the focus, not just looking at the performance, but also on, right, what the person is looking towards to do, right, helping the person identify, right, or to curate or to create the career or the career journey while the person is doing good work, right, or is fulfilling the requirement of the job. The person is also at the same time building a career. So we are looking at turning a short-term reactionary but yet necessary exercise that we have currently in the workplace to turn it into something that is more long-term, right, more sustainable, and as I mentioned earlier, more aspirational. We need to change the coaching narrative, right, from just looking at doing a job, right, to building, right, creating, or even curating, right, a career and a journey that a person could walk on, right? And the focus here should be on the person. So what we try to achieve, right, in this masterclass is to look at the practices that we have in career coaching, right, which often is seen as something that is external. And we want to bring these practices into the organization and synergize them, right, together with the existing practices that we have internally, which many of us, right, will identify as either a HR strategy or talent management initiatives or program in the organization. So that's where myself and Connie comes in, right? Connie with her deep expertise in career coaching, all right, and my experience in human resources. We are bringing these two together and presenting to you, right, in this masterclass. So what we want to do is certainly, number one, not, right, to do any wholesale change of how coaching is done, right? But what we want to do is to leverage on the existing coaching and feedback exercises or practices that you may already have or are aware of in organization. And what we want to do, right, is to incorporate conversations on career to be part of it. And certainly, right, conversation about the individual. Because we all know that you can't talk about career without talking about the person, right? Without talking about the individual circumstances. And on a higher level, right, having the person to be aware, right, and take action on his or her goals, right, in what he or she wants to do. So we want to certainly focus, right, or refocus ourselves to look at the person and then using that as part of the conversation in the existing coaching and feedback interventions, right, that we have in the organization. I'll now pass the time to Connie, who will walk us through the different topics that we will cover in the program.
So let me just say that CP is exactly on target. There is much of what we do that is directly applicable to this different function. However, we have sort of two stakeholders, key stakeholders going on here. One is the business, and the other is the person, the employee. And pre-COVID here in the US, we were at full employment. And so it was American businesses began to get interested in how do I keep people? And of course, COVID did a lot of things, but we're still struggling with this piece of adequate staffing. And it's not just getting bodies in, it's getting bodies in who know what they're doing and will stay and be a part of an organization. So it's talking about that piece that is our focus in this. And as CP said, we're doing that by beginning with, there's already discussions going on about how am I doing on my job in the workplace. So we're really talking about how can we build on those discussions, or maybe use those discussions for, yes, handling whatever is a short-term need, but also engaging in a perhaps longer-term discussion about an employee as a part of a business, those kinds of things. We are going to be focusing on coaching techniques. Now, as CP said, there's no intention to say, oh my God, we've got this really great new technique. No, we're working on those fundamental coaching skills that folks who are here today have and have been practicing. And we're going to talk about them in this different situation. We also hope to build in time to actually have a chance for us to practice this, which for many of us is hard to do, but it's so essential for us to do this. Back when I took my counseling courses, I hated doing that. But after I finished doing it, I realized how important it absolutely was to my growth to have that. So we're going to ask us to have a chance to do this. Now, we're not talking hours and hours of doing this, but we're talking about having a chance to practice and then step back and reflect on that practice. And CP, if you go on to the next slide, then. We also are going to focus this discussion. We're not focusing on, this is not necessarily, we're not talking about performance feedback that a manager might be making here. We're talking about this around the piece of formal and informal assessments. Now, that's an interesting piece when we step inside a business, because some of the traditional career assessments are less useful in this kind of situation. So it's a broader spectrum of the kinds of assessments that we may be thinking about or using when we are talking about working inside a business in terms of that. However, let me take you back to what CP said. The techniques are the same. How I talk with someone about the results of what an instrument, whether it's a formal instrument or informal instrument, is saying is the same, whether I'm measuring interests, whether I'm measuring values, whether I'm measuring leadership skills. Okay, so we're focusing on that process of having those discussions and structuring those discussions and executing those discussions in the best way that we can. And next slide, please. And our last 2 points here is, we all know this, we get what I call pushback. Okay, so how do we deal with pushback? We've been in those situations where people roll their eyes and say, "Yeah, nothing like me," even though we can see it's a lot like them. Okay. So what we're talking about here is, how do I deal with those? How do I deal with the questions? How do I deal with the client concerns? And there's some slightly different kind of concerns when I'm doing this inside a workplace. So we will be talking about those and talking about techniques and practicing some of those techniques. And then this topic number 5 is just really an important one. There's a lot of opportunity that happens in the workplace around helping a person think about themselves as a person in that workplace and not just holding a job title. And that's what we're talking about here. There's opportunities built in to have these discussions. Are we training our managers about how to have those discussions? Are we feeling equipped to be able to have those kinds of discussions? And so that's what's going on in topic 5. We'll also do a little bit about, people are people, and people have diverse needs and diverse motivations. So that's what we're talking about there with different employee profiles. Okay. What matters to me in work now is very different than what mattered to me when I was in my 40s. All right. So it's just, people are different. And CP said at the beginning, yes, there's a piece of developmental in here. People are going to change and grow in the workplace. So that means what their passion is may change and grow as well in that. All right, CP, back to you then.
Thank you, Connie. So this is an overview of what you can expect, right? If you join us for this program. So there are 3 parts to the program. First part will be the e-learning that we will have you to complete at your own time. It will take probably about 6 hours. We will cover topic 1 and 2, of course, not the whole topic, but some of the key essential points for you to do your own reading. All right, and together we'll be putting in some form of assignments. Right, there will be a forum discussion and some reflective questions that we will put you through. The summative assessment for this e-learning portion will be a 20 questions quiz per topic. So topic 1 and topic 2 will be 20 questions each. We need to set a passing mark here because of the funding criteria. So it will be 80%. There will be no limits to the number of tries, right? We will also take into consideration what you put in the forum and also the reflection as part of the summative assessment. But the key part here will be the quiz, right? Which will be of the essence, right? For us to be able to evaluate that we have completed this part of the training. The second part will be the 3 days face-to-face session with live video conferencing. So Connie will be dialing in live from US, right, in the morning. And then I'll be taking every one of us for the afternoon session for each of the 3 days. So which are the 3 days we are talking about? You'll be 29 to 31st of March, right? We have secured a very conducive learning environment for everyone, right? So if you are able to join us, we will have these 3 days face-to-face together. It will be 8 hours each, so it will be the typical 9 to 6. We will require attendance of 75% because, again, it is the funding criteria. And with this, right, we will have some formative assessment during the workshop. So you can expect the typical role play discussion, as well as some simple assignment during the session. But what is important here would be the summative assessment. So there will be a quiz of 20 questions per topic. All right. So we will find the time for you to take the quiz every day. All right. So there'll be 3 days. So at the end of every day, you'll be taking a quiz, right, to complete the requirement. We will continue to use the platform, right, for you to do your discussion as well as some form of a reflection. And that will be also something that we will take into consideration as a summative assessment. What is critical here again will be the quiz. Now, for these 2 parts here, right, if you complete the training requirement, right, which in this case means you attend, you complete the e-learning, right, you go through all all the materials, you attend the 3 days, right, and meeting the attendance criteria, you will be awarded a certificate of attendance, right? Later we talk about who will be the awarding these agencies, right? But for now, if you complete the training itself, right, you will get a certificate of attendance. If you are able to complete the quizzes, right, and you pass the quizzes based on the requirement, then you will be awarded a certificate of completion, right? So if you complete the e-learning and the 3 days, and you complete all the quizzes, right, you put in your fair share of discussion, as well as doing the reflective or assignment, all right, given to you, then you will be given a certificate of completion. Now, there's an additional component. Now, this is an optional component that we are offering for anyone who would like to receive feedback for an actual workplace career coaching session that you can conduct, right? So if you can find someone, right, whom you can do this practice, then we are very happy to offer this to you, right? It will be a 1 hour, we call it a virtual supervision, or essentially this will be done virtually, right? So it will be myself, right, observing you and anyone else that you can get to do the practice with you, right? We will be using NCDA, right? Some of you will be familiar with NCDA, right? I will leave to Connie to give a bit of intro about NCDA, but we'll be using NCDA as well as the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation standards, right? So we will give you the standards during the 3 days workshop. And for those of you who would like to take up this virtual supervision option, all right, we will be evaluating you based on these observable competencies or standards, as we call them. And if you are able to complete this part successfully, we will then issue you with a certificate of competence, right? Because you are able to demonstrate, right, what we are looking for you to do as part of your virtual supervision. So these are the 3 parts. Right, it all leads to different outcome, but there will be the same outcome is learning, right? So we certainly want to maximize and also optimize your learning. So whichever path that you go on, we are sure you'll be able to take away some very critical, very useful learning. Right, next I will pass back to Connie, who will share with us about the organization, which will be awarding the certificate. But before I do that, I would just like to cover the first point, which is on the certificate of achievement. So certificate of achievement will be issued by Distinctions Asia, right? Once you are able to complete the training based on the attendance criteria and you completing the assignment, you might not pass the quizzes, right? But if you complete the course, right, we'll give you a certificate of achievement. Okay, now I'll pass the time to Connie.
Okay, so what we wanted to do here was to kind of make sure we're as close as we can be on the same page and talking about all these different certificate things, because it's incredibly confusing about these. First of all, just a quick reminder that any credential or licensure in the US, folks may also be licensed, but any credential or licensure, the requirements for that is held by the body that is granting the credential or the license. So what that means for us as we're trying to build up our continuing education hours, as we call them in the US, or professional hours as they're sometimes referred to, is that the organization that we want to say, hey, here's my continuing education hours, they determine what counts. What counts is in relationship to the competencies being measured by that particular credential. All right, so what that means for us is, as we issue you the various certificates, your job then is to match that up with the competency of the credential that you want the continuing education hours to count for. And there's a lot of common competencies among career credentials, okay? helping skills, ethics, assessment, having a theoretical model, so forth and so on. They're all common to any kind of career credential that you would look at. So CP's told you about the first one. The second one here is my business will issue your certificate of completion and the certificate of competence. Okay, those will come from the Pritchard Group. I can also award you what we in the US call continuing education units. They're also sometimes called clock hours. They're also sometimes called CEs. They're also sometimes called contact hours. So they have a lot of names. But basically what we're talking about here, it is determined by the number of hours you devoted to that training and the activities of. All right, now we all know some of us do things faster, some of us take longer on things. So in this particular course, remember we were talking about 6 hours online, self-study, and then 24 face-to-face or virtual or what we would call contact hours. All right, so that would be a total of 30 hours is the potential to be offered for that portion. And if you do the supervision, we would add in that additional hour for that. So then it would be 31 continuing education hours or CEUs as we talk about them. Those hours, the Pritchard Group is what is called a selected provider of continuing education within CDA. So that just means that I'm on their list as one of the vendors. I'm one of those kinds of things. So what that means is you simply match up the competencies of this course with the competencies of your credential. So that means 9 times out of 10, I can't guarantee it, but 9 times out of 10, this training would apply for the CCSP, the CMCS, the CCC. It is not going to be relevant to the CCCE, the one that's the educator that teaches graduate courses. And there's also a supervisory one that I never knew the initials when I was on the commission, and I've certainly forgotten them now that I'm no longer on the commission. It may work for that because it has perhaps that supervisory component in it. But that's probably a little bit of a stretch. I checked with CCE, which some of you may know that the CCE is the Center for Credentialing Education, which is a separate organization from NCDA. Both of them are highly respected organization. They're just different organization. But the CCE is the grantor of the USGCDF. And I checked with them as to, okay, as a preferred provider on NCDA, will my hours count for the GCDF, US GCDF? And I was told yes. And I saved that email. Yeah, that's a good thing to do. So that's basically what we're saying here. We're glad to award the continuing education units to you, and then you have to match them up to your credential as to how does this fit with the competencies. Keeping in mind that almost all career credentials have a huge commonality of competencies in them. All right, so that's just a kind of brief explanation of this. We're glad to answer any questions about, what does this mean for me? How can I leverage this training to help me gain different kinds of pieces that I need in addition to the learning, of course. But we're glad to answer any questions.
Any questions from anyone? I'd like to do some any clarification. Meantime, while you are thinking of the question, I just want to add to what Connie mentioned about the certification. We will be providing you with a letter. All right. Once you are able to get the certificate of completion and certificate of competence, right, we will provide you with a letter stating the topics that have been covered, all right, as part of your certification.
Yeah.
So that as you submit, right, to NCDA and also CCE, right, they are clear of, what topics you have gone through and how it kind of relates to the standards that they have. Like what Connie mentioned, right, the Picture Group is a selected provider. So that part of that qualification has already been approved. It's just a matter of doing the documentation and submitting the paperwork. Right. I myself, I have done that with Connie. All right. I have no problem getting my qualification with NCDA as well as with CCE. So we are looking towards you, having the same as well, right, after you have completed this course. Okay, Doris has a question. What will be the next run after March? Wei Si, would you like to take this question?
Yes. So our funding is for now from WSG is for one run, and this could be the one and only, or we could receive the best feedback ever, and we could have a second and third run subsequently. But for now, after March, we don't have a next date yet. So so if this could be your chance to see CP and Constance in action. Yeah, this could be one. If we have more, definitely, Doris, we will keep you posted as well subsequently after this initial run. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Doris.
Okay, Dennis has a very interesting question. I will take this question first and then I'll pass to Connie to add on. So Dennis's question is, will you consider this as a performance coaching or coaching someone for career clarity? I would say that it's more on the latter, which is providing that clarity for career. Now, like what Connie mentioned, we are not going to look at reinventing the coaching technique. So some of us will be familiar with the typical coaching technique evolving around the GROW model or the SPI model, right? We are not going to deviate too much from that, right? There is no a groundbreaking different technique of how we do it. So in some ways, you can say that, we are identical to performance coaching, but the focus is again not so much on the task, right? Because for those of us who have done performance coaching, right, if you just look at SBI, for example, right, it talks about situation, talks about behavior, it talks about the impact. It has got nothing to do with the person himself or herself. Even though GROW model, some of us can argue that it kind of focus on the person when you talk about goals, right? But actually it's not. If you actually use it in a practical sense, right, for those of us who have done it before, actually GROW model, the G, most of the time we focus on what the person needs to achieve for the work itself, right, for the job, right, the goals for the job. So I guess, what we want to do is to have that focus more on the clarity of, the career that the person can build, while at the same time, right, not having that conflict on what the best person is actually doing on a day-by-day, day-to-day basis, right, in the role that the person has in the organization. So while yes, it's more on coaching someone for career clarity, but we wouldn't say that it's going to be very different from performance coaching. We will still talk a bit about that as well. Connie, anything to add on your side?
It's CP is exactly right, and it goes back to the first piece where he was talking about working inside a business. It's a balance, all right? It's not really either or. It's the balance that's going on between the two pieces here. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Dennis. And Eugene has a question, right? Does this naturally align with learning and development, right? Trying to see whether they reinforce each other, especially for L&D practitioners. Or certainly, right? This is definitely related to learning and development. Of course, learning and development, there are many different definitions, but if you ask me as an L&D practitioner in the past, before I moved into HR business partnering, to me, L&D is part of OD. All right, and in OD itself, right, you have talent management and talent development. So if you see L&D as something that is developing the talent in the organization, just like what Connie mentioned earlier, right? When we talk about the challenges that businesses, especially those in US, are facing in retaining their talent or retaining their workforce, right? This is certainly related to L&D. I will even say that this is one training, right, or one masterclass that L&D practitioner will find it exceptionally useful, because your role as an L&D, right? You might be training your own managers, your own people managers in doing coaching. That is where you can impart to them, some of the essence, right? Or the elements of what one can do as a manager, right? To talk about career, right? With the employee. So you could actually infuse some of the topics, right, that we're going to discuss with you into your own training as an L&D person for your own managers, right, in the organization. If that is what I'm assuming that you are currently doing, Eugene.
Yes.
Yeah. Connie, anything to add?
On target. Good.
May I, CP, if I can, take a step back. Why is WSG giving us this grant over here? Because if you look at it from the organization point of view, really, right now we're talking about, the great resignation, people are leaving us. You can't really prevent guys from leaving you, right? But what the latest research have really shown is if you have a great career conversation and people realize, they have the balance, I'm having this job over here, but I have, flexibility, I have this, I have that, right? So if they come to a realization, hey, this is what I'm getting in return for this career, people tend to be more engaged. People tend to, perhaps display a bit more loyalty. So that is the part that drives home this to our conversations about engagement as well, which is why it's necessary, not just for career practitioners, but also as HR practitioners as well, right? How can we actually have such conversations to drive engagement? Perhaps that's the mandate given to us, through this funding as well.
All right, thanks, Lucy. Mini has a question. So are the application assignments and reflections to be done in class and not to be taken back, I think, to take back and submit separately? So the application assignment and the reflection, right, will be hosted on the platform, right, the e-learning platform. While we will give you some time to do them towards the end of the class, you could certainly, do it at your own time, right, on the platform. So what we will do is we will give you sort of like a deadline to complete all the necessary assignment and reflection. Now, not to worry, that we're going to get you to write 1,000-word essay, because we also don't have time to look through the 1,000-word essay as well. The application assignment and reflections are meant more as a tool to kind of get you to internalize the learning that we will in the session. The one that we will take a bit more seriously will be the quizzes, because the quizzes are going to be quantitatively marked, and those are the data, right? Or rather, the quantitative data is what we need to submit to SSG to verify and to validate that you have reached certain level of achievement, completion, or competence, right? To what we have just kind of mentioned earlier. Yeah. So we will, certainly not going to make you do a lot of assignment and a lot of reflection in the class itself, because we will have quite a lot of activities to talk about and to conduct with you together. Yeah.
Yes. CP's on target. Yes.
Thank you. Right. Any questions from anyone? Any other questions or clarification? Of course, if you think of anything that will help you to further decide whether you want to join us for the masterclass, you can always reach out to us via email. Right? Myself and Connie, we will look into those questions and provide you with the information.
Absolutely.
I have one. We have a participant who is not able to join us today, but he has texted us prior to this webinar, right? He's asking, right? He's already ACC, ICF, right? So why should he come for this one? Why should he come for this 3 days masterclass? Tell us.
I would have two answers to that. The more practical answer to that will be for the anyone who is ICF certified, right? You still need to call your hours if you want to renew your ICF license. The reason why I know is because I'm a PCC, so I know how it works. All right. While ICF, they do have pre-approved training providers. That pre-approved training providers hours, right, will only be needed if you are looking at upgrading your certification. If you are looking at maintaining, right, so for example, if you are ACC, at this moment, or PCC. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, so just pardon me, right? ACC means Associate Career Coach, and PCC is Professional Career Coach, right? Okay, that's what it means, right? Essentially, if you want to stay at where you are at a certain level, you just need to be able to submit certain training hours, right, of the course that you do. And given that ours is a course related to coaching, you will certainly be able to justify your hours. Now, on the learning perspective, of course, one part of it is we are using the ICF standards. That's especially for the supervision. So that serves as a very good refresher for those who are ICF certified. I think one other portion is really to look at how do we kind of synergize, right, between what we do as a coach, right, to what is being done internally by HR, right, to develop and to grow employees. I think one of the things that we focus as a coach, right, and those of us who have gone through coaching training, especially as an external professional coach, you will realize that we often see ourselves as an outside-in person, right? Well, what we try to do is we are trying to influence from the outside into the organization. And to be practical on looking at that, now how many companies can really afford, right, their employees being coached by an external coach, right? We all know the answer, right? Is sometimes not, it's most of the time not possible, right? So what we are trying to do is to then bring the outside perspective and the practices in-house and explore, right, what are some of the things that we are really doing internally, right, that is actually able to synergize with what we see coaching or career coaching is like from the external perspective. So any existing ICF certified coach, right, I think one of the topics that have not been covered in any of ICF coaching, or rather required by ICF, right, is very much on the practices, right, that companies do have, right, when it comes to their employees. Now that is that one part that we will be exploring and we will be talking about, so that when you have that conversation internally, or you have the opportunity to have internal conversation about internal interventions, right, when it comes to coaching employees based on their career, you will be a lot more aware of what are some of the things that are really being done, right, that you can leverage on or synergize with. Yeah. So that is that part. And if anything else, right, is a good refresher. So you will get a chance to go through another training that will help you to upkeep your coaching standards.
Thanks for sharing, CP. And you know what? It reminds me of a conversation I had in the most recent Workplace Big 5 profile certification. People were talking about career, right? And people are asking me, right, if career conversations are so important, why don't managers have them? And my answer to them is really very simple, right? They lack the skills and the confidence. They are worried when I start talking about career progression. We raise questions I cannot answer. I set expectations I cannot fulfill. This is why you need to come for such courses. You need training to develop those skills, because it can get a bit sensitive, right? And this is something that is a really more specialized arm of coaching, right? Because these conversations can really go haywire, right? Isn't it, Connie?
Yes.
So yeah, so that's my point over here as well. Mm-hmm.
As managers, we tend to see ourselves as providing solutions for employees, but we certainly cannot provide any career solution because career is very individualized. What we are doing is we are facilitating the discovery for the individual using our own experiences as a coach, right? The manager as a coach, or using our own knowledge, right, through the years that we have been going through the same experiences. So we are certainly hoping that what we know about coaching, right, which is not to prescribe solution, but to facilitate, right, the individual to find a solution. We want to bring that essence into the company, and then equipping managers, HR practitioners, right, with the know-how of doing that, and then leveraging on psychometric profiling assessment. Even if you are not certified in any of these assessments, you certainly can learn, right, the construct of the theory behind. Right, so one of the things we're going to talk about is on the 5-factor personality model. Now, do you need to be certified to be able to talk about the theory? right? We certainly wish that you will be certified, because then that will be another course that we can conduct for you, but that will be another story altogether, which we see will share in another forum. But you know, we want to be able to share with you the construct, right? Basically the theory behind some of these personality tools, so that you look into we want the individual, right, coaches to be able to leverage on the language, all right, on the knowledge, right? So you don't need to have the tool, but your conversation can still be as powerful. Of course, if the tool is easier, right? But even without the tool, what we want to do is to equip you with that. So you notice that this course itself, we don't incorporate any or we don't require you to be certified in any tool, because that is exactly what we expect many managers to be anyway in the organization, right? Not to have to be certified, right? But still be able to use the theory behind, right, to have that conversation.
Although I must say the Workplace Big Five is really complementary to this.
Yes, definitely. We encourage you to take up the certification after this masterclass, but that will be a different story. Okay, mindful of time, so it's getting late, and I think Connie's day is about to start in the US. So Wei Si has already shared our email address that you can send any questions that you might have. We'll be sharing this video with you shortly, right? What we have recorded today, and you know, if you have any colleagues or anyone who might benefit from knowing a bit more about this course, we welcome you to share as well. So there's no copyright of the video. Just feel free to share with anyone that you know, and we are hoping and hopeful that some of you here, if not all of you here, you'll be joining us towards the end of March, right, in this session, in this masterclass. Connie, any parting words from you?
Rest. Time to rest.
Thank you so much for getting up in the early morning to join us before you start your day in US on the East Coast. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. And we look forward to have you to join us in the masterclass. Thanks, Wei Si. Thanks, team, for the help.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Tony. See you soon.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you. Cheers.